I'm the director, the AI is my actor, and I get to tell it what I want from it. And then if I don't like what it does, I go back and say, no, we're going to redo it this way.
Welcome to Writers Uncorked, the podcast where we uncork the truth about the writer's life. We're your hosts, best-selling authors Jenna and Michele Scott, and we're here to bring you the no BS chats you've been craving.
Get ready to raise a glass to the real, unfiltered world of writers. This is Writers Uncorked.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Writers Uncorked. Today, we're going to be talking about a big subject that seems to be rocking the author world at the moment, and that is all about AI and what's sort of happening within that space. So I know, Michele, you've shared a few little apps and stuff with me that you've been experimenting on. So I thought we could have a chat about, where you're sort of at with it all and, what you've sort of tested out.
Yeah, okay, how do you even start this conversation? Because there's so much to unpack. I think that every writer out there owes themselves the time to take to actually look into the various AI programs. And the one that I'm currently looking at right now is Pseudo-Write. Now, here's the thing. I'll give you the pros and I'll give you the cons, my opinions. The pros that I'm finding with Pseudo-Write or AI in general are, if I am having a writer's block moment, or I'm looking for names, or I need help with an outline, I'm finding that it can really be beneficial. Like, oh, that I didn't think of that, right? However, the cons, there's a few. So Pseudo-Write is now just come up with, first what they had was initially with their program was you could go in and you could type in, I need a 12-act outline about a romance that takes place in London between, a 20-something-year-old woman and a 30-year-old something, you could give these prompts and it would essentially give you those 12-beat outlines. Now they've gone further and that you can dive in and they have something called Story Engine, which allows you to do a brain dump, which then provides you with a synopsis, which then provides you with an outline, which then can give you character study, and then you can go in and write chapters. Now, the more you can write, and the more information you can give it from the beginning, the way better off you are, right? It will provide you like a storyline. It will provide, if you just say, write me an outline of a romantic comedy that takes place in New Orleans. It'll give you that. But it to me, I'm like, that isn't, not that any of it necessarily may be real writing, but to me, that's not real writing, right? And then another negative that you'll find is as you see if it spits the chapters it spits out, it doesn't really correlate chapter to chapter. So there's this it's almost like you have one chapter and it in some ways almost retells that chapter because it doesn't really tie it in. I don't know how to explain it. So you really have to give it a huge dump. Like you really have to give it a lot of information for it to get it right. The other thing, it handles dialogue pretty well, but then there's a lot of repetition. I've noticed in description and just so that everybody out there understands, I'm messing with it just to see what it comes up with. I don't ethically and creatively as a creative, I don't feel comfortable putting something out that an AI has generated and then putting my name on it.
Yeah,
I don't feel
fully. The people that are just literally putting in and writing the whole story and then not doing much with it, that's where it's wrong. And that's where I think we were talking about it in one of our calls together, utilizing it as a bit of a co-writer. I think you were using that term just to see what it can sort of do and give you ideas as if you're brainstorming with a friend or a fellow author or something like that. And I think we need to, as authors, it's not going away. We can't just sit in a corner and just be like, no, I'm sitting here and it's not, nothing's going to happen with it. And if I just ignore it, it'll go away. It's not going away. You can see it in not only our industry, in a lot of different industries. It is affecting, a lot of different industries, and the people that aren't stepping in and utilizing and seeing how they can use it to their advantage are going to get left behind in a way. Like, you can't be ignorant to the fact that it's going to be here to stay. It's the future. And it's like, if we go back to many, many years ago, of like when the internet first came out, and a lot of the generation were like, nah, I'm never getting into that. This is scary. This isn't right. It's going to take over jobs, blah, blah, blah. And now we look at the future and it's like, well, that's how many other jobs have been created from that, and how we live our life, how we connect with the world and all of that. So I think we've got to, be curious about it, like see, okay, well, how can I use this and see what happens? Yeah.
Yeah. So to all those points, first is I look at these programs as if, okay, I'm the director. This is the best way I can think of it. I'm the director. The AI is my actor, and I get to tell it what I want from it. And then if I don't like what it does, I go back and say, no, we're going to redo it this way, right? Like, that's kind of how I look at it. And the co-author piece is exactly another way to really look at it. It's like, you get ideas, it helps generate ideas. It can move you along faster. Like, you can write faster pages. I think, again, I'm going to go back to, I don't think it is ethical. There's going to be a lot of discussion on the ethics around this. For me, I would not feel good putting an AI generated book out and it has my name on it. That doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. I know it's going to happen. I know it is happening. So therefore, back to your point of writers kind of owe it to themselves to stay on top of it. Because here's the thing, I've been around publishing. I started publishing, my first book was published in 2004. At that time, and I was traditionally published by Penguin Random House. Well, it was Penguin then. At that time, if you were to self-publish a book, you were really looked down on, right? Nobody did that. Vanity publishing is what it was called, right? And so you worked your ass off to get an agent and do all these other things, and right, and people still do that, right? However, then you fast forward, let's see, what was it, about 6 to 8 years later, all of a sudden there's KDP, and then indie publishing starts becoming a thing, right? Oh, and not to mention there's a Kindle, right? So there's ebooks. And I can remember myself saying, I am never going to have a Kindle. I'm never going to have a Kindle. I'm only going to read books. I'm not going to right? But then what happens is all of a sudden I start getting best-selling books on Kindle, on ebooks. I get myself a Kindle because I'm like, well, this is paying me, so I really should pay some homage to it, right? So so there are all of those pieces. Look, writers are going in, and people. So I'm gonna differentiate somebody who's using this and they're putting out books this way, and this is all the only way they do it. That's not really a writer. That's just somebody trying to make a quick buck, whether it works for them or not. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I read somewhere recently, I think it was 40% or 60% on the young adult list was like generated by AI, like the top 100s, like 60, I can't remember what it was. And so there's a big thing about it, right? I don't think that's okay. I don't think that's right. And
how do they classify themselves as a writer if they're not actually doing? Yeah.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think this is good to have this conversation about, like, how we are curious. Like, I'm a bit like ignorant of it, like, oh, it looks too scary. And you shared this app with me, and I went in there and I'm like, oh, okay, where do I start? Like, it was all a bit like overwhelming for me. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I use it? And I had to come up with character names for a new series. And I'm like, all right, let's just ask it, give me, because there's this character part within that section. I'm like, all right, give me some names. And then the names, some of them were shit as, and I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Or I did pick, I did find some through there. So I used it for that. And then I did a bit of a test with the outline and added in, some notes that I have of like, okay, this has got to happen. This has got to happen. Can you put this into this? And I'm just playing with it and seeing with the outlining sort of process and seeing what can help. Yeah.
It is kind of like almost like a little bit of a game. It is a little bit fun to play with, like to see like, oh, what's it going to come back with? I'm going in and doing like, as I'm working through, like I am doing a story with it just to see what I can get, how it works. And if I like it, so what I can tell you is that, so it'll give me a chapter and then it's like getting half of it wrong. So then I'll go back in and make revisions and tighten it up, and then it gets better. And then the more it learns, the better it gets, but it's never going to replace, in my opinion, your tone, your creativity, and essentially at the end of the day, your soul. Because what really comes through creative works, like, sure, there's AI generated art that looks absolutely beautiful, right? But there's no soul behind that. And that's a whole nother discussion about this. That's a spiritual discussion, I think. but there's no soul behind it. And I firmly believe that we all have soul. And when we start stripping all of that away and turning everything over to a technology, that scares me. It honestly does. But I also feel I have to, as a writer, or we should be educated on it, because at the end of the day, it could really become the norm. And I think what you don't know could be scarier than what you do know.
Yeah.
So
and I think being
right?
be curious about it and be open to have a look. And like, I'm at that state, like, I'm too scared to actually go in there and give it, like, let it write a chapter for me with like with what info I get. Like, I'm not at that yet, because I do love my process at the moment, but that's not to say I might, like, if I get stuck on a scene within the book that I'm just like, I don't know, and then get it to sort of put in a few prompts and see what it comes up with to spark something, that might get, but I'm still in that ignorant, like, some bits of me are like, I don't even want to do it, like, because I like where I'm at. I like being in my little space at the moment, but I am curious, like, I have got that curious mind about it, and knowing that it's smart business, because I know it's not going to go away if we just sit here and wish it will. Like, it's, yeah.
It doesn't have to change your process. It doesn't change my process, really. It hasn't.
Yeah.
And again, this is an experiment for me. And what's interesting is you can do, like, I like to write, I mean, I write mysteries and thrillers, right? And I write different kinds of mysteries versus different kinds of thrillers, why I do two different names. So then I'm always curious about, well, what would it look like if I wrote a romance? Or what would it look like if I wrote a sci-fi or a fantasy? Like, that's kind of what I'm toying with here, like, to see, like, and so it's kind of, the prompts are really good. The putting something in and getting a prompt back that you can rework is kind of cool. Like, oh, I didn't think of that. And then you allow your creativity to take off. Really, it's kind of almost like when you were in school and a teacher would give you a prompt. It's kind of like that. There's a lot of ways to really look at this. But again, I think what I want to reiterate is, like, burying your head in the sand and not accepting that this is a big part of our culture now, and it's not going away. And you're looking at it with movies, and you're looking at it in the whole entertainment industry. You should probably know I don't want to say the evil, but you should probably be aware of what is going on
What
out
it's
there.
capable of, like what it can do. Yeah.
That and I think it can be a benefit, and I think it can be a negative. I mean, you're having AI generated cover arts now, right? And you can actually, there's some pretty good covers that it generates,
Yeah. There's a lot of discussion about that, and people pulling covers, not realizing that it's AI generated images actually that are on stock photo sites, and a lot of authors are taking them down now because they didn't know that they were AI generated and it was stealing somebody else's art. So there's a lot of copyright stuff happening with that, and a lot of people I've seen a lot of posts recently in the community.
That's going to be the real issue, is the legalities of this, and how do you keep up with it? How do you keep up with the legalities and the ethical issues and the copyrights and everything? So that's frightening, because none of us want our stuff copied. Like, I don't want my stuff copied, right? So I think I'd rather know, though, what is it capable of, than not knowing what it's capable of, because I think knowledge is key. Like, having the knowledge is going to help you make decisions down the road. And also recognize, if you pick up somebody's book, you're like, that's mine. Right. But it's going to really, really, honestly, okay, this is going to be a really, really big fight. And again, writers are going to have to determine how much they want to fight this. Because, for instance, I wasn't going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about it. I have a book out. It has been out since 2004. This book was my very first book published. It's titled Murder Uncorked. There are 9 books in the series, 7 books and 2 novellas, that series has done quite well for me. It has been optioned for a movie. There's a lot of stuff happening around it. And another author is coming out with a book titled Murder Uncorked. Now, I wouldn't have an issue with this if this author's Murder Uncorked was a romance or a fantasy. But the title Murder Uncorked lends itself to cozy mystery, right? And therefore I have an issue, because not only that her character is works at a winery in Napa, or in a in a California wine country. And that character winds up being a suspect in it's the main suspect in the homicide that happens, right, in the murder mystery. And so there's all these little pieces. So the reason I'm bringing this up actually is because the ethical piece of like the AI generated stuff is going to pick up on stuff like that, and it's going to copy things, right? And so then you have to decide.
It's going to be a lot of legal, activity, like things that come up about it. Yeah.
For a lot of us, it's going to be principle, right? So for me, this is a principle thing. This is an integral thing, right? What is the first thing that you do, Jenna, when you decide on a title for a book?
Like check Amazon, check if there's something else out
Google
there that has, and making sure it's not like, because you might double up on titles, but as long as it's not in the same genre, same thing, because then you're gonna have people that are confused and it's not right.
Yeah. So I didn't want to get off on that tangent, but it did tie into what we're talking about and all the ethical pieces. And I am fighting an uphill battle. I've been told that. I'm aware, like, I'm probably not going to come out ahead on this. They're going to keep the title. They're going to win the title. And I'm going to fight it. And you know why? Because I would never do that to another author. It's just not, there's no that's not an integral thing to do. And so that's the thing we're going to have to look at with the AI stuff is, how much integrity do I have here? Like, right? Like, am I going to let this thing just write a whole book for me? Like, and essentially it's copied a whole group of authors or whatever. No, but look at it as a tool. Look at it as something in your toolbox that can help you with the prompts, that can actually help you design a pretty good outline.
Yeah, and if you look at it like the writing support apps like Grammarly, or can't think of the other ones' names, but like a lot of people use them to support them to write the book. Like if you're using this as a similar tool that can help you. And I want to talk about as well, like not only in like other tools that you can use, not only for your writing, but AI have other tools in terms of writing marketing pieces and stuff like that. And I wanted to talk to that side of things because there's a few different apps, like there's Chat GPT, which literally a similar sort of concept. You can put in like, write me a social media post on or like this, and just add in a few different things, prompts that you want it to write about, and then it can generate social media posts. The thing I'm seeing with that is you've got like, it's very like, there's no emotion part to it. Like it is very robotic. It is very like, you can literally, if you look at social media and you see posts, you can tell what's AI generated because it's got a million emojis. It's got American spelling. I pick up on that because I write in Australian spelling, and the way it's worded, it's very like robotic. It's speaking to you. It's got no soul in it. Like you're talking about, like it's got no personality in it. But I can use that, or I can be like, write a newsletter up, but with this. I can take that and literally rewrite the certain parts. It's going to have bits in there that prompt me of like, okay, these are the key 3 points or whatever I want to talk about. And it can give me the bones of it. And then I'm going to use that. So for social media, like it can support authors with that, where you can write up a few different posts and maybe you give it like the blurb of the book. And it's like, write me 10 different social media posts that's going to sell this book. And it's going to wrap out 10 different social media posts. And you're going to have to edit them to sound a bit more like you in the tone. But that's another way that it can support you, in your author business with the marketing side of things and helping you with that. There's also for like podcasts, because I do a lot with podcasts and transcripts and stuff like that. There's an app called Cast Magic, and it's an AI generated one, and you upload the recording to it. It'll create the transcript, which is really handy if like you're writing show notes or you're wanting to write something on social media. You can take out, you've got the whole transcript, and then there's an AI generated content in another tab that literally posts out like a LinkedIn post, a reel post, a newsletter, and everything like that. Like and it does the timestamps as well. Like it creates all of this stuff for you, so you don't have to, back in the day, transcripts, this is an AI generated thing. Transcripts, you'd have to literally listen to the whole recording and like type out, and you're not going to get word for word. You're just going to get a bit of an overview. So that's AI as well, to look on like the flip side and how it is changing other people. Like that's jobs where people did have to write that transcript, and now the computer does it for us, but you're utilizing that content, and all the content that is written by AI. It sounds pretty shit, but it has good points in it that you can use and change into your tone. So I really wanted to share, I wanted to share the flip side, like on the marketing side, what's happening and where you can sort of use it in that sense. So there's a lot of different apps there. Yeah.
I think authors using it, and particularly on the marketing side, makes a whole lot of sense, because we don't have what do writers want to do? Writers want to write. We don't want to market. We don't have time for that. And a lot of people don't have time to hire somebody to do it for them. So to me, that's a benefit. That's a positive, right? Like if I can cut down trying to come up with ideas, like 5 hours of like, oh my God, what am I going to write here? Because this isn't my forte. And I could take that time and I'm writing chapters. Well, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That's time saving, and it makes sense because you're right. Like writing, it's going to take jobs. It is going to take jobs. So that's why I'm saying, what I'll go back to, like, educate yourself on it, right? Like right now I'm taking a Chat GPT course. I'm taking these courses because I don't want it to take my job. Right. So I'm going to figure out, okay, I'm going to inform myself and educate myself. But on the marketing side, I don't want to stereotype, but I don't think a lot of us as writers are terribly great marketers. I think some of us can be, but I don't think that's what where our strengths lie. So I think that utilizing AI for that is very, it makes a lot of sense, and it saves time. It saves time.
Yeah. So. But I just think, like, you can't literally just be like, write me 10 and then just copy and paste them in. Like, it's not going to translate. You're not actually going to get sales from, like, you're going to have to do work to make it in your tone of voice, because you're a writer. Whatever you put out on your social media channels, whatever you put out, like, it's got to sound like you, and it's got to connect with your community and your readers. If it's just AI generated and it's a robotic voice, you're going to come across it that it's like, people are going to see through that shit. Like, it's,
well, you have to have authenticity that sells. So there's an interesting thing that's happened. So writers before the internet were huge, right? Writers could write. We didn't know who they were. You knew Agatha Christie. You knew she was a writer. You knew, John Grisham. Like, there's different writers, Stephen King, right? And then the internet came along, and then you had indie publishing come along, and then you saw all of a sudden a huge thing happen. There was a shift happening in indie publishing, where there were a lot of writers who sold a lot of books, who became they became celebrities, essentially. And so then their social media was everywhere. They were everywhere, and it was a big deal, right? So the smart thing that those writers did was they lent themselves to their readers. And what I mean by that was they were open to communicating with on virtual book clubs. There was a variety, whether they were communicating on the internet, on Facebook, or then Instagram, TikTok, that kind of thing. So you got to see the personality. So you're right. If you want to utilize it in marketing, and you're going to have to put your own flavor, your own spin on it to make it really work. Yeah. But I do. I do. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just going to say this because I'm seeing it, because I'm taking these courses, and I am seeing people out there writing books, utilizing these programs, and they're writing the whole thing, and you've never heard of them. And then they're putting their marketing together this way, and it's working for them. And that I don't like at all.
Yeah. And I think we'll end with that, because that sort of sums up, like,
I actually think there should be, and maybe there will be, and I don't know how you police it. There's really can't. But putting some kind of, like, this was an AI generated book, or this was partially an AI. I don't know that you can do that. But
I think that's going to be, I think that's going to be the future of, like, where does the copyright come into this? Where is this computer actually gathering this content from? Because it's got to gather it from somewhere. Like, computers gather content from all on the internet. So obviously, where are they getting these words from? All right. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.